This is a full training from our mastermind event in Dubai. We have got our next one coming up, 9th to 10th of February. Hit the link below if you want to be there, learn from the best in the world in person, and ready to moonshot your business next year. Hit the link below to sign up. Enjoy the training.
So I'm going to be talking about how to actually unlock peak focus and buy back your freedom. The reason why this is so important to me is because this is the only way I've been able to actually scale as well. And I was in a ridiculously difficult position as well, but I'm going to run you through exactly what that was. So we're going to go through who I really am, my thoughts on the differences between being rich versus being wealthy, whether goals matter, leveraging dopamine to 5x your business, supplementation hacks. That's not it. Drugs to optimize cognitive performance, super focused toolkit, burnout, workspace optimization, essential beliefs, and we'll run through questions at the end as well, but any point at all, cut me off, please. So, who am I really? Why this is so important to me? So, if you don't know me, I'm 24 years old. I'm Azri. I'm just finishing up medical school now. Most likely going to specialize in sports medicine or plastic surgery, one of the two, but going to take a year out or so to 100% focus on the business. I've scaled, as Charlie mentioned, around 17, 20K months to now consistent 65, 70, around there. We're shooting for the 100K mark. We have been for a bit, but there's just a few things that we need to do. So the reason why this is so important to me is because absolutely everything that has been successful and everything that has been bad, I would say, let's say quote unquote bad learning lessons, has been due to time management. And I can guarantee if you look closely enough into all of your lives, nearly everything that you would feel could be optimized is due to time management and due to focus and more specifically attention. So if I interchange those words between focus and attention, I'm talking about similar things. So attention between specific tasks to move the needle in your business is the only way that you can consistently scale and actually work around that to buy back your freedom. When I talk about freedom, there's a few things I mean. I mean freedom around being able to spend time with people that you like, doing what you like. I used to be in a position where I was literally working 12, 14, 16 hours a day for years. And I'm saying that from a very regretful point of view because it did cost absolutely everything in my life. So everything around my life did crumble for a long period of time before I figured out how to actually build leverage. And at that point, building leverage for me was using the resource I assumed I had the most of as well, which was time. So I used time to build up my business to a point where I couldn't scale past further than myself, unfortunately, because I didn't know about how to buy back other people's time. So that's what I really mean by being rich versus wealthy. Being able to do the things that you like is being wealthy. So if anyone knows what happened here yesterday, so me and Charlie and Adolfo, we got some supercars and we were just ripping it apart for a bit. And we somehow got stuck in the sand. No idea how that happened. I mean, it could have been anyone sitting here at all who may have just driven it into a pit and got us stuck and we had it towed out. But honestly, like, it was still fun. Like, the whole day was fun. The day before was fun. And being able to do whatever I like. And more importantly, not having to think about anything else because my team is running. Everything is still going on. I have a solid team around 15, 20 people now. And that's probably what I'm more proud of than anything else. I have a lot of pride in my team because they're absolute killers, they're absolute animals. And basically building leverage beyond myself was the thing that I feel I built my freedom around as well. So actually not having this mental stress around everything else is what I consider wealthy, being able to go places I like, and do places I like. And what it took me a long, long time to figure out, which Charlie taught me very early on, is, there's nothing more foolish than something done efficiently that shouldn't be done at all. So Peter Drucker said this. I think I might have miswritten it here, but Peter Drucker said that's very, very successful recruitment manager. one thing that I see a lot of people doing, and I'm definitely the person that's most hypocritical around saying this because I did this for way too long as well, is basically doing absolutely everything and hoping to scale past themselves doing that. So I was spending 4 hours a day sending 400, 500 messages on my own, taking about 6, 7 sales calls, trying to fit in at med school between then, going to my hospital rotations, and then, of course, trying to fulfill as well. I was trying to coach all of my clients. And then you get to this point where you're basically crying yourself to sleep because you have refund requests coming in, Stripe accounts getting shut down, IG disabled at some point as well because you're trying to send manual outbound messages to too many people, trying to think that's going to be what's going to actually grow your business at some point. And then you slowly go into misery and depression, and that's that's not right, but like that's basically where you get to a point where it's just this up and down roller coaster of not feeling good. And when you don't feel good, you just don't feel too happy within yourself as well. So that's one of those things where I genuinely think when you get to a point where you're able to do the things I like, so this is, I don't like putting up, buying back your time is a skill. I don't like putting up fitness photos with a room full of fitness professionals in better shape than I am. So that's one thing where I noticed your goals aren't unique, the actions you take to define them are. What I mean by that is, so I'll tell you how I actually came into realization of this. I'll tell you a story. So when I was in med school, all the way through med school, every single person had the same goal, right? Everyone wanted to help people. Everyone wanted to make money. Everyone wanted to be rich. And it took me so long to realize that pretty much everyone wanted to do the same thing. And nearly everyone here, every single person here, has built their life to an extent around significance. There's different factors that drive people into their goals. One of them is significance. And significance means leveraging your social status amongst other people. And then when you have these goals that are so similar to other people, you fail to separate yourself in terms of what your purpose is. So we have some brilliant speakers here. JPV, absolute inspiration. Dr. Chris Bierman as well. Like everyone who's spoken today as well, super inspirational. And they spoke so much about purpose. If you have no idea what your actual purpose is behind what you're trying to do, you lose direction in where you're going. When you have no direction in where you're going, you have no reason to wake up and then want to build something beyond yourself. And that's where we're going to talk about dopamine as well, because leveraging dopamine is so very important, and making sure that you're able to consistently build the spikes amongst your baseline, above your baseline, is what you need to do to have the drive to keep going. So how many people here, raise of hands, would say, one, they struggle with either procrastination or focus? Okay, that's a lot more than I thought. All right, so when I say procrastination or focus, when you say you struggle with procrastination or focus, would you say that is because you find it difficult to do a task that you set yourself for a prolonged period of time? Or would you say that's to do with completing that task? Is it something that gets done but takes too long? Or is it something that you failed to start with in the first place? Raise of hands for failed to start with in the first place. Okay, raise your hand with you start something but you fail to finish this. Okay, very interesting. So what I really want to talk about is how, first of all, you can get started and how you can actually finish the tasks themselves. So one thing I want to actually direct you to is, do goals even matter? And I want to give you an analogy around this, because the whole idea of whether goals matter or not is a big question, a big topic, right? And in my opinion, right, I didn't have goals which were written down every single day. I was very contrary to everyone else, basically. I didn't have this whole journaling thing. Maybe I should have, or maybe I would have gotten out of this mess a lot earlier if I did, right? But if you think about it as this situation, analogy, take two darts players, exact same ability, exact same level of skill, same situation. One of them has a blindfold on, the other one does not, right? in a long enough period of time, on a long enough time frame, the one with the blindfold on will always lose to the person without the blindfold. Setting goals is similar to just removing that blindfold. It gives you direction because regardless of where you're at in your position with your ability, just having direction in where you're going gives you clarity to be able to succeed faster and succeed more often consistently. Consistently doing the things that you need to do is what is going to move you forward in your business, in your life, whatever you actually want to do, right? The reason why I say writing down goals is a good idea for most people is solely for the purpose of direction, not for yourself to attach yourself to the outcome. Attaching yourself to the outcome is not a great place to go because I do believe someone mentioned it earlier, you consistently linking yourself to the idea of failure to meet those goals is also not a great thing. But knowing where you want to go is the best way to go about it. So if you want to write something down, what kind of goal setting I do personally, if this is something that you want to write down. So a someday goal, what is it? What's something that you want to do someday, 5 years down the line, 1 year, monthly, weekly, daily, right now? So the reason why they go down this ladder is because you will know what actions to take to achieve each of these just by writing it down. And then, does anyone here journal by any chance? Raise of hands, anyone? Okay, journaling's not a bad thing at all. It's one of those things that studies on generally increases your dopamine above baseline. I'm gonna go through what does and how to optimize that in a bit. But this is just what I use. If anyone else wants like a framework template kind of thing, what am I grateful for? I think what really helped me is actually understanding why I'm doing this, because when you just journal for the sake of journaling without knowing what you're actually trying to achieve from it, it gets to a point where it's just not going to take you too, you're not going to have the motivation to do it every day. Another one, what story-worthy moment happened? If you guys want to take a photo, whatever it is, and then have a look through, but a quick recap of all of that. This is 5 minutes that will actually change the trajectory of your day, so I would recommend that. But remember, it's much easier to steer a ship that's moving rather than steer a ship that's stationary, so just start. This is one of those things where you don't want to productively procrastinate for or mentally masturbate for a long period of time because it doesn't move you closer. I'll go through what I actually did because what I actually did was significantly different to what's optimal. So I'm going to go for how you can actually leverage dopamine to 5x your business, which is what I feel I did quite well. I think I did quite well. You never know. But the main thing is what I did at the beginning to build leverage was use my time. And for me, that was literally waking up, doing the work, and then getting through the day, and then knowing that at some point I had to scale past myself, so I bought other people's time. So that was building a team for me. And then I bought other people's attention, ads. So Mark Zuckerberg has built a brilliant system where you can leverage his time or whatever he has built around his team to buy other people's attention, because there's only a few things that's going to actually generate more income, right? There's, as everyone said so far, booking calls, closing calls, fulfillment, right? The process of doing that, buying leverage in each of those sections is what's going to buy you time. So to leverage dopamine, tip number one, first of all, what is dopamine? So is everyone kind of aware of what dopamine is, or does anyone have any doubts as to what it is, what we consider it? Raise of hands if you have any overview of dopamine so I know how detailed to go into this. All right, Charlie. Okay, got you. So happiness is very good. So it's linked to one of the hormones that's associated with dopamine. So serotonin, oxytocin is the feel-good state that it puts you in. Dopamine specifically is what drives you to seek stuff outside of yourself. So this is throughout history exactly what it's been used for, to forage for food, right? To reproduce outside yourself. So that's not just sex, that's also foraging for food so you can actually get food to grow yourself, right? That's one thing that dopamine has been biologically produced for in your body, so you can do this again and again. But keep in mind, when you reach this target, you get to a point where it spikes and then it drops below your baseline. So you've probably heard of the whole Olympic medal depression syndrome, whatever it is, gold medal syndrome. So when they reach a target, they go below baseline and then they feel worse afterwards. That's because they've attached themselves so heavily to the outcome that it gets to a point where you're continuously spiking and dropping when you have an outcome that's huge that you actually hit. So what is dopamine? It's the drive to actually seek desire and crave motivation, basically. That's essentially what it is, but tip number 1 is to make sure that you do not lie to yourself about your addictions. What I mean by this is that there's so many different sources of dopamine, all the way, this being one of your biggest killers of everything, really. Your phone, the amount of dopamine, just looking at your phone is going to be one of those things that spikes your dopamine levels. And being on your phone, just scrolling through apps, is going to continuously have this spike and drop. So just so you know, I spoke to Adolfo about this earlier as well. People tend to lose their energy when they get older. This isn't meant to happen. It's just the slow progression of spikes in dopamine to a point where it doesn't reset to baseline for long enough. And that's why people lose their energy. And this is done because it's subtle. It's not one of these huge spikes where it's cocaine and it's acute and it's just a huge spike in your dopamine system and a drop again where it's heavily below baseline. It's one of these things where it's this constant wave, and then you get to a point where your baseline is just lower and lower. And this happens to pretty much everyone here. And there's a few sources of this with addictions. So, of course, very dopamine stimulating activities, pleasuring yourself, for highly palatable foods, constantly, for example, music as well, heavy music. All of these things keep spiking your dopamine levels, and we want to get to a point where we're reducing that. And there's a few tips that I will go through to reduce that. Tip number 2, kill procrastination with discomfort. So if you feel that you are procrastinating over things, the best and the number 1 way to reset your focus is to get to a point where you push yourself so far out of discomfort that you push your baseline trough down below where it was before. So things like cold showers, things like setting a target which is extremely uncomfortable. So setting yourself like a 10-kilometer run if you've not done one, wherever your fitness level is at. Setting yourself a target that you know is going to be extremely difficult. And knowing that you're going towards this target and knowing you've pushed yourself past this discomfort gets you to a point where you do actually reset your brain to get rid of procrastination very quickly and easily. For me, that was trying out very heavily extended fasting periods. For example, 24, 48-hour fast. That's one of those things where you will literally reset your brain. So there's a lot of benefits around fasting. I'm not going to that's a huge lecture to go through. But number 3, intermittent reward schedules. So as I was mentioning earlier, these constant spikes aren't good, but having more of intermittent spikes with rewarding yourself around tasks being completed rather than no tasks being completed but still spiking your baseline levels are good. So you know exactly what you feel good from and where you get your dopamine from when you complete a task or when you actually complete an activity, so you can actually align that with yourself. Before I move on, any questions so far? Of course, yeah.
The intermittent reward schedules is something really good, and that's something I recommend everyone does. Like when you achieve a big milestone, you sign up a big client, or you hit a record sale, whatever it might be, do something to like reward yourself to reinforce that positive habit, because then you'll be like fuck, well, if I do really well again, I get to get X thing. So like I had a phase for a while. I was I think I was dying for a bodybuilding show. Every time I'd sign up a client, I would buy a pair of trainers. I had to stop because I had too many, but like do something to reward yourself so that you then get excited, not even just for the person signing up or the money, whatever it is. There's like, oh, I get this thing that I can associate with that. If anyone has children, I don't, but I hear that works very well with like rewarding them with things and then they do what you want.
Next one, dopamine history matters. So this is why like I hate the idea of saying generalized things, because every single person in here is completely different. Your baseline levels of dopamine are completely different. The actual spike that you get from different activities are completely different. You already know this because you know that you going for a 10-minute run is completely different to you going for a 10-minute run or you going for a 10-minute run. Exercise is one way that you can increase dopamine levels. I'll tell you now, actually, there's a few different stats I actually have around how much different things do increase your dopamine levels. So this is maybe interesting to you, and it may not be, but here's a few things that you can keep in mind. So chocolate increases your dopamine levels 1.5x above baseline. These are based on very generalized studies. I don't know exactly how accurate these are. Sex, 2 times above baseline. Nicotine smoked, 2.5 times above baseline, but very short-lived. Cocaine, 2.5 times above baseline, a lot more short-lived. Amphetamines, 10 times above your baseline. So yeah. So when you're thinking about frying your dopamine receptors, there's your answer. Exercise, 2 times above baseline. Caffeine, very interesting one. Very minor increase above baseline, but caffeine, in terms of regular ingestion, does increase the number of dopamine receptors that you have, actually. So you get more of the effect the next time you have a dopaminergic activity. So caffeine, I'm not heavily against. It's just one of those things where building a tolerance also isn't a great thing. So if you're slamming down pre-workouts every single day, be very mindful of that, because if anyone does use pre-workout or caffeine here, you'll probably realize that's probably why you went to gym again and again and again. It's more because you wanted that feel-good feeling, not just from the exercise, but also from the caffeine and the pre-workout. So something to keep in mind, just interesting. But dopamine history matters, so be very mindful as to what you're using for that and what reduces baseline dopamine levels. So there's just a few interesting ones I wanted to cover. One thing is melatonin. So melatonin does decrease if anyone uses melatonin supplementation. Next thing is viewing bright light between 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. I don't know if anyone knows Andrew Huberman, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do. A lot of his studies on bright light viewing, and more specifically, actually viewing morning light is one thing that you can use to reset your circadian rhythm as well. So viewing morning light as soon as you wake up, as bright as possible, will reset your sleeping patterns if you are struggling to sleep as well. So when I say reset, will help in resetting your sleeping patterns. So 2 things that reduce baseline dopamine that you might find interesting. And think of it as phones equal cigarettes. So just be very mindful when you are using your phone and what you're using. And I've mentioned this a few times, but I want every single person to be able to utilize the same tools I did as well. If you download an app called Opal, O-P-A-L, I've forced everyone in the mastermind coaching course to already do this, and I won't stop doing it because it saved me so much time as well. It basically blocks all your apps for a certain period of time, and then you can set the schedule. You don't need the paid version. The normal version is fine. That will save you more time than you ever know, but more importantly, it will give you an idea of how long you're actually spending on your phone as well, because you'll notice that it blocks it after you can press take break for like 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is. And you go on your app and you start scrolling and it blocks you halfway, and then you're like, oh, geez, I've been on my phone for 15 minutes. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind. And one thing I really, really do want to push is, I know a lot of you guys are pushing into the content space as well with organic personal branding. This is something I had relative success in, I would say, and actually find out how to go viral. Adolfo will go into it about how to do that a lot more, but I've done bits and pieces on that. Be very, very mindful of what you call research. When you're saying you're about to do research and you're unclear as to what that research is going to be, and you're just hoping to find something to recreate when you go back, that's probably one of those things that drains your time on apps, because you tell yourself you're about to do something positive, but you don't know whether you're in an offensive or defensive state when you're about to go in to do that research. That's a really, really good tip. That's one thing that I would be very, very mindful of, and even write it down. Write it down as your task list. So I'm saying this because if there's literally one thing that you hear today that increases your focus, productivity, whatever it is, by 5-10% even, that could be the difference between you scaling past 2-3x, because it's only ever one decision. You're only ever one decision away from changing your life. And I say that with experience, because it was only ever one decision. At any point, I gave myself a 2-minute rule, and I always said it's always 2 minutes to change your life. And whether that 2 minutes was telling yourself you're about to start doing something that you know you should be doing, or putting it off till later, or starting something, stopping, getting distracted, those are the 2 minutes that changes your life. And because I had to do this, I was forced to do this, I was in med school, and it was either you fail your exams and you get kicked out of med school, which was, I'll tell you now, 70% of my year. My year, for some reason, barely anyone graduated. And that was the only reason. It was like, do you go home and tell your parents that you've just failed because you were trying to start an online fitness coaching business, which they told you not to do in the first place? Because what are you doing? You're about to go into medicine. Why have you had mentor? Why are you getting a mentor? And then you realize, okay, this is already going to make me more than any profession in being medicine, professional medicine is actually going to be. And the other thing is, like, how much do you value your freedom? It's like, if it is 2 minutes to change your life, and that's what's going to buy you back the freedom to be able to buy your mum a house. Like, I've just, last month, just got a property here in Dubai. Thank you, Charlie, for estate agent recommendation. These are the things, if you're really aiming to do, then you can do. Screwing around with supercars, going to Dubai. We've traveled to 6 countries this year. During med school, in the time that I had, the time that I bought, I would say, I built the leverage to buy. And that was because I told myself, if I don't start this task in 2 minutes, then that's going to be the difference between me being able to do these things and then me failing at the things I told myself I would do. And I am very strong in terms of how I feel about this, because it was just these thoughts, which I heard one time on one podcast somewhere, that basically changed the trajectory of where I was going. So, yeah. Ooh. That's a very, very good question. So I'm saying absolutely everything from a point of view as to the times that it did work for me. And for me, I always saw it as, I need to do this more times than I fail at doing this. I need to succeed at doing this more times than I fail at doing this. So I came from the trading space like 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever it was. I was heavy in the crypto trading space, was quite successful in that. So I knew the difference between risk reward and the ratios that you actually need to maintain to be successful. And all I knew is that I need to succeed in this more times than I fail. And when I failed, what I did not do was kick myself out the whole day, tell myself I'll start tomorrow. I literally got straight into the next task. And the one thing that did help me, I had a mentor 3-4 years ago, I believe. They shut down, they retired, so they probably weren't great. But the one thing that they made me do back then was track my time. So I used a daily time tracker for the past 3-4 years. Every single activity in my day is tracked on a spreadsheet, and it's got my pie charts as to what I'm actually spending my time on, whether it was CEO activities, whether it was fulfillment, sales, whatever it was, right? I can share the spreadsheet with you guys if you want. I'll send it to Charlie and you can post it on somewhere. But this one thing did literally change my life, because you can open your app, you can open your banking app, you know how much money is sitting in your bank account. You know where you're spending that. You know exactly where that's going. But the most valuable resource, I feel, anyways, time, is, and you have no idea where you're spending it, and you have no idea to backtrack where you've spent that for the past month, is a bit risky for me. Like, for me, I'm very data-driven, so I like knowing numbers around everything, which is one thing that served me well in sales, lead generation, managing my team, actually making sure they're on point with everything. That was one thing that helped me, and knowing where you're actually spending your time, so you don't when you look back and see that you've spent 40 hours on sales calls the past week or whatever it is, and you've spent 30 hours messaging people when this is like a $10 task for a VA task who you need to manage, hire, train, manage one time and continuously upkeep them and continuously train them. When you know that's what you need to do to buy back this much time that you've spent this past month that you can spend with your partner, with your family, your kids, and remember, they're paying the cost of your poor time management as well. That's what was more painful for me than anything else when you get a call from your dad saying, why haven't you spoken to your mum in 4 weeks, right? That's what's a lot harder to sit with because you don't really know when your time expires, right? And that's something I came into contact with a lot earlier because of the field I'm in. You see people on their deathbeds with all their regrets every single day around what they should have done, right? When you see that again and again and again, you realize that you're not unique. This is going to happen to you. It's the only thing that you're guaranteed, death. And if you know that this is the only time that you have with the people that you love and the people that you want to spend time with, and you're wasting it away on doing things where you could have bought that time back, you realize that this is one of those things that you need to optimize to not just buy back your own time, which is what I'm going to go through some tips. There's some stuff on the board, forget that. But this is why you need to buy back your own time to actually build the freedom. And I know Dr. Chris Spearman just spoke about actually how bad he felt after he bought his time back. That's something that I will think about after. But at a point when you're using up all your resources, the most valuable resource you have, time, on things that you can outsource, that is going to help you scale your business and make you more money, that's when you need to have the actual mental space to make those decisions as well. That's why you need to buy your time back. So anyways, enough of the absolute downhill of mood in the room. Sorry about that. But the next tip, so dopamine supplements. So 500 milligrams PEE is phenylethylamine, alanine, sorry. So this is what's found in dark chocolate, if anyone knows. This does increase your dopamine levels. Alpha GPC as well. I'm gonna go through some recommendations of which ones I actually feel is gonna help most as well. Huperzine A, all increase your baseline dopamine levels. So if you're into the whole supplement world, you might know about this already, but I'm gonna give you some recommendations as well. Supplementation protocols. So actually increasing your cognitive function. These I would say are absolute key. So EPA, most people already get this. Creatine as well, 0.06 grams per kilogram per day for optimal cognitive function. Choline, 500 milligrams. I'm not going to go through all the biochemistry around all these supplements, why they work. Just trust me on this one, or Google it afterwards as well. Alpha GPC, 300 to 500 milligrams per day. A bit hard to dose, to be honest. L-tyrosine, very difficult to dose for different people, so you need to test it out. But actual supplementation, another one, quickly. If you can find this, get this, basically. Instacoffeine with lion's mane and chago, I think that's how you pronounce it, chago or chago, whatever it is, by 4-Sigmatic. Very, very good. And if you can find it in Dubai, if you live in Dubai, I know they have it in the UK and US. So a supplement from Dr. Emil Nutrition, really good friend of mine. We used to work together as well. By the way, quick story about Dr. Emil, who has his own very successful supplement company. Probably my absolute biggest role model starting out because he was one of those people that actually left medicine after specializing in emergency medicine and then started a very successful online coaching business, retired it now as well, trying to live his life. But anyways, very successful supplement company as well. Gaming supplements that gamers use, if you want to do more research into that, please do. I think I've mentioned it before as well. This is one of the ones I would recommend, because keep in mind, they're getting paid millions to do what they do, so them being at peak optimal cognitive function is super important for them. I'm sure a lot of you guys do know Dr. Dean as well. I know Charlie does as well, but he has a very, very good cognitive function supplement. I don't know if I put the priming AM priming stack as well as pre-focus plus. So these actually have the optimal dosages of all the ingredients. So the actual ingredients I went through, Dr. Dean actually does have a very, very good blend, and it has huperzine A as well, which is hard to find in a blend. So anything that you take in terms of cognitive function, I would say take it earlier in the day, always. So, by the way, before you guys take photos of this isn't the list of things I recommend or anything, right? I'm going to go through the actual drugs that do help cognitive function. So let's not like go around the fact that there are drugs that you can optimize your cognitive function with. So very, very good question. So that actually came up a lot in our coaching calls as well this past year. So with ADD, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. So when you have ADD, it's not the fact that you struggle to stay focused into one task, it's that you struggle to stay focused on a task that you actually like doing. So when it's a task that you know that you need to do but you don't like doing, that's when it becomes difficult to stick to it. So unless you may already have been prescribed medication, which at that point you need to go by your doctor's orders because they also know what your blood work looks like and they can keep up with your general upkeep. But with those supplementations as well, medications, that's something that you need to make sure that you're very well aware as to how that's actually affecting you on a daily basis, because most of these are prescribed on a daily basis as well. And you need to know how to actually taper out with the guidance of your doctor, because that can also be quite dangerous. So what I've read anyways on ADD as well, and I've read a lot on ADD as well, it's more the difficulty of communication with other brain areas in your head. So it's limited attention in terms of background chatter in your head, right? So when it comes to that, there are drugs like these which do increase your focus, but you want to get to a point where you're rewarding yourself with intermittent schedules that are light in its dopaminergic effect, sorry. So one thing I use that I'm not sure if many people know as well, but I use nicotine. So I don't actually smoke anything. I don't use a vape. Wouldn't recommend it either, or smoke cigarettes, but I use a nicotine spray. So that gets you acute focus. So I use that every 45-minute and 90-minute Pomodoro blocks. So I will only have it once in a 90-minute Pomodoro block. And for me, that's 45 minutes, 15-minute break, and 30 minutes of work. So after that 45 minutes, I will have a spray of my nicotine, and before as well. And then I'll take a 15-minute break, and then another 30 minutes of work. And that's my first block of work, which is technically 2 blocks. And I try to do 3 of those per day. So that's what my day looks like. And it takes about 6 minutes on average for everyone, actually, to ramp into a work block. So be mindful of that. So a 90-minute Pomodoro block, if you can do 3 of those per day, you will scale your business exponentially quite well. So with the use of nicotine as well, it's one of those things, with long-term side effects as well, general degeneration of neurons, even with the drugs on here as well. This is something that you need to actually consult your doctor about as well, because it's not individualized. I'm telling you what is out there as well. And I don't want to go through the research papers on every single one of these, even though I did actually pull them up, but I got told it was too boring to go through. So this is another thing. So keep in mind, some of these are amphetamines as well. So the modafinil is something else I've also played around with. That's something that if you don't have ADHD or narcolepsy, then you are going to be using it as more, let's say, super physiological cognitive performance. That's something I use because I wanted to, not because I should have done or I had to. And that is something that I will be completely transparent about with helping. Last thing I wrote on here is sleep. So with optimizing sleep, it's probably one of your biggest things that's going to help focus, and it's probably one of the biggest things I'm hypocritical about as well, because my sleep's dreadful. And with that, one thing you probably all know about the whole how to optimize sleep kind of thing, being bright light being one of them. One thing I don't know if many people know about, but it's probably relevant for fitness professionals specifically, is the effect of COMT, so catecholamine O methyl transferase. So this is something that is taxed in the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. So when there's higher aromatization levels in your system, this is basically going to be reduced in terms of efficiency and one of the things that gets depleted is magnesium. So magnesium is a cofactor for COMT as well. When this gets lowered across a longer period of time, it does affect your sleep to a significant extent as well. So supplementing with magnesium bisglycinate is your best bet for this. So if anyone is struggling with sleep, so rule of thumb, keep your first 6 hours or 6 hours or so of your day away from meetings, calls, everything. Keep that for deep work. That's just, I think everyone in the business B2B space as well would agree with this in a long enough time period, mainly because that's the time of the day where you have technically peak focus and you want to use that to make decisions that actually move your business further forward. And generally thinking time scheduled into your calendar is also good. So what I specifically did actually, using my daily time tracker, which please do, if you take one thing away from this that will actually help you, is to start tracking your time, just like tracking your finances, is actually schedule out an ideal week. So just put in containers in your calendar, make a new calendar, right? You can if you have an iPhone, make a new one, homework, whatever it is, and actually block out time for specific tasks. You probably already know this, do this, but you may not actually do it because the main thing is actually doing it consistently over a long period of time. And the cocktail that you were going for is basically 50 milligrams of modafinil 4 times a week. And you also want to go for EPA 1 to 3 grams a day, alpha GPC as well, 300 milligrams prior to your bouts of work. And that's why it's also in pre-workouts as well, actually. So L-tyrosine, 500 milligrams to 1,500 milligrams early in the day. That's everything early in the day, ideally. You don't want to be screwing up your sleep. Did I mention choline? So 500 milligrams to a gram per day. And then for sleep as well, magnesium bisglycinate and GABA as well. If you are, specifically if you're taking caffeine slightly later in the day as well, helps clear that out. L-theanine as well if you're using caffeine later in the day. And I know some of you guys train late as well. So if you're using pre-workout or any sort of caffeine after 4 p.m., L-theanine, it tapers down that spike. You might know what L-theanine does. And then GABA after you finish your training session as well. So, and magnesium bisglycinate closer to sleep. Not for me personally. I haven't tried it. I know there is research behind it. Significant. The thing is, right, everything I tried to do was to limit as many different things as possible because I got to a point where I tried to do everything to be absolutely perfect. And then it didn't get me very far. And then you start cutting out everything because you're like, okay, now I feel like I have to have all this in to get this peak focus block of work done when I should have just been doing that peak focus block. And there's so many different things like, cold showers, meditation is good actually, journaling, everything you can do. But the one thing I would say to do is find one by one, add these in, see how it actually affects you, and then push forward from there. Red light therapy, I think Charlie does. I don't know if he's seen any benefits from it. There is research behind its efficacy, but
red light therapy, I think, makes a big difference. I've felt better since starting. And it's also, I look for things that are like practical you can do without disrupting the day, and you can just sit there with a fucking red light therapy light on you. So it's relatively easy to do.
Nice. Okay, got you. I also think cold showers, if you want to, I think it's something that you should start. The research around it, increasing your testosterone levels and dopamine levels over a long period of time isn't for over a week. Like, it does acutely increase it, but after a week, the actual level it goes above baseline tapers off. So just something to keep in mind with cold showers. So, super focused toolkit. So I'll tell you what I do when I'm about to go into deep work time. So this was either, more recently studying for my finals whilst taking my team meetings. I like to be focused for my team meetings because I maybe overmanage, right? That's one thing. So what I do, if I'm about to do some deep work, go on YouTube, type in 40 hertz gamma. There's one video, gamma specifically for me, 40 HZ gamma. I put that on, put earphones in. That blocks out a lot of my distractions. Noise cancelling headphones, ideally. Next thing is I have my first bit of caffeine, so that's usually around 35 to 40 milligrams, and that's usually like one espresso shot level of caffeine. And I have my modafinil, around 50 to 100 milligrams. I have one spray of nicotine, and then the other thing is actually optimizing your workspace around that. I think I wrote about this. Yeah, so optimizing your workspace. There's a few things that you should do, right? That's optimal around optimizing your workspace. First things first, of course, clear it up. So there's as many, even stuff just sitting there, maybe clothes or whatever it is nearby on a table, get rid of it, right? I actually just clear up everything around me before I start work. And then having your screen, if you're looking at a screen, having it at your nose level, the midline of the screen at your nose level or higher is optimal. Switching between, if you have a standing desk, or if you don't have one, invest in one. That would be your next best bet as well. Having a standing and sitting state, changing states, keeps your focus levels higher. The next thing is, technically you should do meditation before, 13 minutes per day, not 4 hours before bedtime. It affects your sleep. I'm not going to be the one that tells you about JPP. It's probably going to be better for actually going through all of this. But those are the things I would do. And then the 2 pieces of paper, or if you're using notes, the 2 pieces of paper you need, you want to have maximum 2 at one time. Research does show, by the way, the 40 gamma hertz is also going to be the second best for learning specifically. For focus, maybe I would say the best. First best is technically silence, but for me, I don't like any distractions whatsoever. So that's one thing I do. And then if you're typing, do not disturb mode on your phone, on your laptop, 100%. You can get the Chrome extension unhook. So if you do open up YouTube, it blocks out everything on YouTube except the search bar. So if you're actually doing research or studying whatever it is, you're only searching what you need. So unhook is a Chrome extension. And then what you want to do is open up your daily time tracker and then write the start time of when you're about to start. So this stops you lying to yourself about when you actually start doing work, and it also stops you lying to yourself about when you stop. And then I actually start a stopwatch as well. So I use my Apple Watch, but you should probably use a sand timer. That's probably best. And the next thing you can do is put your phone in another room. So as I mentioned, just having it in the same room is distracting. Regardless of what it is, nearly every single task you can do on your phone, you can 100% do on your computer. The computer is less optimized for keeping you addicted, right? So that's one thing. And remember, everything I'm telling you is in the hopes of making you more intelligent. And the only thing that can help you become more intelligent in your actions is the actual rate of change. So the speed of execution and the consistency of action around all of this. The only difference between, for example, Charlie, Dr. Chris here, and everyone else is that they've executed so much faster around the things that they need to do. So this is something I'm really trying to get better at as well in the business side of things. Charlie's always like, hey, you need to up the ad spend, 100% up the ad spend, because we spend nearly nothing on ads, and nearly everything's on labor. So them being able to know what to do and actually making the right changes to be able to execute on that is the only reason that they're further. Because regardless of if you screw up, if you lose money, if you fail, you're still investing into your learning. There is no losses in the game of business. Business is an infinite game. You're just trying to survive, right? That's the only thing that you need to keep in mind. Every single thing that you do, spending 5K, 10K, 15K on ads, whatever it is, you're learning lessons. As long as you're not being absolutely retarded and then just blowing it out on something that you know isn't converting after you have the data that's showing you it's not converting. Unless you're not doing that, which I doubt most of people do, you're still learning. And the other thing is you need to actually use that resource that you have time to invest into more learning. So nearly everything I did outside of work hours, whether I was eating, whatever it was watching a podcast, watching a YouTube video, listening to a course, whatever it was, to make sure that I was actually learning what I needed to do to learn more. So just remember, speed of execution, none of this matters if you haven't executed. And just a thought to keep in mind, gotta do your best every day, but your best isn't going to look the same every day. So just don't put too much pressure on yourself around what needs to be done, because it's next to impossible to actually execute at the same level every single day. So, and the whole goal is actually to just set better standards for yourself, not to be perfect. I'll never claim I'm perfect around any of this, probably very, very far from it. I just found how to best optimize for myself to get to where I am right now, and that's basically where I am. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well done, Azri.